in class today, we will focus on the toughest part to make it simpler. Interpreting acid-base abnormalities for the QE1 exam. Number one, you just have to learn 3 steps. Just three. Three. You tell me, Dr. Boni, is this true? Yes, just 3 steps. Number one, I need you to know the normal values and function. Number two, I also need you to know the function and the controlling organ, and I'll explain everything. And number three, you're going to then use this information to interpret every acid-base abnormality case you see in the QE1 in 3 simple steps. Now, in relation to the values, I want you to know just 2 values. The first value is 35. Please write it down. 35. The next value is 45. Please, I've written mine down. 35 and 45. Please write it down right now on your paper. Write it down. 35 and 45. Right? Write it down. 35 and 45. 3 labs that you need to know just to be able to write, to be able to ace this: pH, carbonic acid, and bicarbonate. So the 2 numbers I want you to know are 35 and 45. The 3 labs I want you to know will be pH, carbonic acid or CO2, and HCO3. 35, 45, and then these 3 labs, pH, carbonic acid, and HCO3. Why did I say learn 35 and 45? Normal pH is 7.35. Okay? Normal pH is 7.35 to 7.45. That's the range. That's why I said learn 35 to 45. Normal pH is 7.35 to 7.45. If the pH of the patient is less than 7.35, the patient is acidotic. If the pH of the patient is more than 7.45, the patient is alkalotic. So please, the 2 numbers again, 35, 45. We are making acid-base abnormalities ridiculously simple. If the pH is less than 7.35, patient is acidotic. pH is more than 7.45, patient is alkalotic. Doctors, please, can I proceed with your permission? 2 numbers we need to know, 35, 45. What labs should we know? The pH, CO2, and HCO3. Simple. Forget about every other thing. Okay, good. I've been given the permission to move on. Next line. Remember I told you to remember 35 and 45. So we bring it to the carbonic acid side as well. Normal range for carbonic acid is 35 to 45. So please remember, normal range for pH is 7.35 to 7.45. Normal range for carbonic acid is 35 to 45. pH, if pH is less than 7.35, patient is what? Please, can you type it for me? If pH is less than 7.35, patient is what? Acidotic. If pH is more than 7.45, patient is alkalotic. The 2 numbers I need to learn for CO2 are 35 and 45. But the interesting thing is this. CO2 is acidic. Just keep that in your mind. CO2 is acidic. And CO2 is regulated primarily by the lungs. And when we say the lungs, that means we're talking about respiratory, right? Doctors, please, I hope I'm not rushing it. I hope I'm not rushing you, please. We are good. Okay, Dr. Shah says we are good. Okay, good. So, again, I want to reemphasize, and I'm saying this just to 2 numbers I need to remember, 35, 45. Normal pH is 7.35, let me say, to 7.45. In reality, I should say 7.35, 7.45, but because I want us to remember, that's why I'm saying that. Normal CO2 is acidic. Normal CO2 is 35 to 45. CO2 is acidic. So in other words, if you have a patient CO2, which is 60, I have a question. Is the patient acidotic or alkalotic? Just don't even say respiratory or anything. Forget about that. If you have a pH and if you have a CO2 and the CO2 is 60, based on this, the higher the CO2, the patient is acidotic. So if you have a pH of 60, will you say the patient is acidotic or alkalotic? Please, just tell me.
Acidotic.
Acidotic. Beautiful. Now, if CO2 is, say, 12, What will you say? Is the patient acidotic or alkalotic?
Alkalosis.
Okay, forget about every other thing. Take these values simple. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, we said that CO2 is controlled by the lungs, right? Breathing faster and deeper will blow off CO2. Because remember, we take in oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide, right? So if I'm breathing, that means I am blowing off more CO2. However, if the patient is in a state that he's not breathing well and he breathes one, and then maybe he takes about 6 breaths per minute, that means the patient is storing more carbon dioxide. So if I'm breathing faster, that means that I'm reducing carbon dioxide in the lungs. If I'm breathing faster, that means I'm getting rid of carbon dioxide. If I'm breathing very slow, that means that I am storing carbon dioxide in the body. Please, does that make sense? Remember, the more carbon dioxide the patient is having, we will say the patient is acidotic. If the patient has less carbon dioxide, we say the patient is alkalotic, right? If the patient is breathing fast, that means the patient is blowing off carbon dioxide, and that means that the patient is becoming alkalotic from the carbon dioxide perspective alone. However, if the patient is breathing slowly than the normal breathing rate, then the patient is storing more carbon dioxide. Doctors, are you following me? So breathing fast is what we call hyperventilation. Breathing slowly is what we call maybe bradypnea, right? The patient is breathing slowly. Okay. Now, this is another number I want you to learn. This is the last number I want you to learn. 22 to 26. So the first number was what? The first two numbers were what? 35 and
45.
please, 35 and what? 45. And
45.
then the last two numbers are 22 and 26. That's it. Now, while CO2 is acidotic, HCO3 is basic. And HCO3 is controlled by the kidneys. HCO3 is controlled by the kidneys. So the more HCO3, we say that the patient is more alkalotic. If there's less HCO3, we say the patient is more acidic, right? Okay, so let's do this quiz. Let me just unshare my screen. Those on Facebook. What is the normal pH value? Please, can you type it for me? I want to see. Facebook guys and those on Zoom. Normal pH value that we need to remember. Normal pH values that we need to remember. Good. 7.35, 7.45. Facebook gang, please. Normal pH values. Okay, good. Normal CO2 values. What are they? Normal CO2 values. What are they? CO2, carbon dioxide, 35 to 45. Beautiful. Now, HCO3, please. What are they? HCO3. Beautiful. Now, okay, let me go back. If I say a patient's pH is 5.5, that patient should be dead anyway. Is the patient acidotic or alkalotic? I'm talking about pH. pH 5.5. Is the patient acidotic or alkalotic? Beautiful, acidotic. If pH is 12, is the patient acidotic or alkalotic? pH, alkalosis. Beautiful. Okay, let's go to CO2. If the patient's CO2 is 50, from the CO2 perspective alone, will you say the patient is acidotic or alkalotic?
Acidotic.
Okay. If CO2 level is 12, from the CO2 perspective alone, will you say the patient is acidotic or alkalotic?
Alkalotic.
Let's go to HCO3. What are the two numbers you need to remember in HCO3? Please tell me.
22, 26.
22, 26. Beautiful. 22, 26. Okay. So we are getting our basics right. All right.